1 John 2:28. And now, little children, abide in him, so that, why should we abide in him? So that when he appears, we may have confidence and not shrink from him in shame at his coming. Verse 29. If you know that he is righteous, you may be sure that everyone who practices righteousness has been born of him. 1 John 3, verse 1. See what kind of love the Father has given to us, that we should be called children of God. And so we are. The reason why the world does not know us is that it did not know him. Beloved, we are God's children now, and what we will be has not yet appeared. But we know that when he appears, we shall be like him, because we shall see him as he is. And everyone who thus hopes in him purifies himself as he is pure. Verse 4. Underline verse 4. Underline it. Scratch it in your glass. Make it part of your app life. Ready? Everyone who makes a practice of sinning also practices lawlessness, and sin is lawlessness. You know that he appeared to take away sins, and in him, in God, in Jesus, there is no sin. No one, here's the key, no one who abides in him, Jesus is calling right now to tell you this is super important. No one who abides in him keeps on sinning. And then John says it a different way. No one who keeps on sinning has either seen him or knows him. Little children, let no one deceive you. Whoever practices righteousness is righteous, as he is righteous. But whoever makes a practice of sinning is of the devil. For the devil, why is that, John? For the devil has been sinning from the beginning of history. The reason the Son of God appeared, why did Jesus come? Was to destroy the works of the devil. So now John's driving us to this point. Verse 9. No one born of God makes a practice of sinning. Why not, John? For God's seed abides in him, for he cannot keep on sinning because he has been born of God. By this it is evident who are children of God and who are children of the devil. Whoever does not practice righteousness is not of God. Boom. Boom shaka. Clear as day. Nor is the one who does not love his brother. I don't know how many of you remember from the late 80s into the 90s, like the Maury Povich show and other quality programming, what was some of the other ones? Jerry Springer. If you don't know this, if you're too young for those, YouTube them, and you'll feel your IQ starting to drop as you watch some of these shows. But one of the biggest parts of Maury Povich's show was the figuring out who's the daddy, right? Who's your daddy? And oh man, you watch some of those shows. Now they're built for the insanity of television, but the reality is they take a DNA test because you have a woman on there who says, "I have this baby, but my baby daddy might be that guy or this guy or that guy," and so they take a DNA test and they reveal it on the show. So they got all the guys on the show and the lady with her baby, and they say, "John, you are not the father." And then he goes, "Oh, praise God." And they got another guy like, "Greg, you are the father." And all of a sudden he's like, "Oh." And so this whole show, it revolves around, who's the daddy? What's the paternity of this child? Because watch. Based on who the paternity is, tells you something about the kid. Because once you know who daddy is, that tells you a lot of how this kid's going to grow up. Your paternity, for some of us, we didn't know who our dad was. Dad bailed when we were young, and we had this we had no knowledge of who dad was. Or for some of us, we know who our dad was physically, but he was like never there, and so he's kind of like this ghost around our lives. Watch. Even in our society, when there's a divorce or whatever, who does our secular society usually give the kids to? Mom, right? Because even our godless society and even other godless societies go, you know what? Between the mother and the father, there's something about women that'll take care of kids. Dad'll throw them a frozen TV dinner when they're 2 years old and go, I'm going to the bar. Here's your dinner. But moms, for some reason, they're built with this weird, we don't even know where it comes from, innate ability to at least care and love for their kids. So to find out who your father is a big deal. If you've been adopted, our family had adopted foster kids that had come through our home when I was growing up. And many of those kids either didn't know who their dad was, or they didn't know who their dad was, but when they grew up, they wanted to have a relationship with him later. Because why? Because who your dad is matters to you because it says something about who you are. And John speaks to that exact thing today, is that how do you know if you're a child of God? How do you know who your daddy is? John's going to help us figure that out. Number one, Christians are known by their paternity. Christians are known by their paternity. Who is their dad? Who is their father? Christians are known by their paternity. Earlier, John had warned that one of the telltale signs of a false teacher is that they will disunify the church and leave it. However, true believers will stay committed to their spiritual community even through difficulty. To denote those who are truly part of God's church, John refers to Christians as those who abide in Jesus. Jesus claimed his followers would not just be religious adherents to his teachings, but would be connected to him spiritually. So, I've told you this a couple times, but I want you to connect with me. Ready? Jesus never said, follow these teachings and you'll be saved. He never said, I'm a religious teacher. If you're good, you'll follow these things and I will save you. What Jesus said, he said crazy metaphysical things. He said, I will come and I will dwell inside of you and you will be new. We have a phrase in the Bible called being born again. That's not just a weirdo phrase from the 60s and 70s LSD trip. You can't be born again physically because you were only born once, but you can be born again spiritually. You can get a new daddy. And John talks about that today. You didn't have anything to do with your physical daddy, who you got, right? God figured out who your mom and dad were going to be. You didn't get it. You weren't up on a cloud somewhere going, you know what? I'll take those two right there. And Jesus was like, okay, here you go. Here's mom and dad. Some of us had mom and dads that were train wrecks. Some of us had mom and dads that were awesome and solid. You didn't get to choose that. God said, you go to that family, you go to that family, you go to that family. God put you in that family at conception. Boom, you grew up in whatever family scenario you were in. Watch this. You didn't get to choose your physical paternity, but you do get to choose your spiritual paternity. You may have had a train wreck physically in your home, but you don't have to have one in your spiritual walk with God. You didn't get to choose this. You do get to choose this. You didn't get to choose this, but that doesn't mean you let this affect this. Just because this was bad over here doesn't mean that your spiritual life can't be awesome. Because you didn't get to choose this family, but you can choose this one. You can choose to be God's child. Watch how crazy this is. I want to show you how it happens. So you're in 1 John. I want you to turn back to the actual book of John. So it's back just a few books. It's the book of John without a number in front of it. And it's John chapter 14. Words of Jesus. So John chapter 14. So watch this. Jesus never said, to get into the kingdom of heaven, just follow A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Religion says these are the rules that you follow. If you're a Muslim, you'll follow these rules. You'll pray this way, this many times a day. You'll give this. You will live in this particular fashion. Okay? Someday, hopefully, at the judgment, Allah will reward you with the kingdom of heaven. Now, there's no guarantee in the Quran that Allah on that day will give anybody heaven. There's no guarantee. Even good Muslims possibly will not get into heaven. There's no guarantee of salvation. In New Age or in any other belief system, there is no way you can tell if you're good enough to get into heaven. Did I hug enough oak trees? Did I frolic through the forest enough for Mother Earth to save me? There's no way you can look at your belief system and go, I hope I've done enough of these things that God, the Spirit, Mother, whoever out there will save me. There's nowhere to go and go, oh, this is it. Now I know I'm saved. Even in Christianity, there are many people who think they're Christians because they go to church and sit in a seat or a pew and they hear some teaching out of the Bible and they go, I'm a Christian. Nope. Jesus never says go to church and listen to some teaching and you're a Christian. Watch what Jesus says. Ready? Ready? Is everybody ready or no? Like 6 people are ready. Okay. Look at this. Look what Jesus actually says about following him. How do you know that you can be a child of God and not have to worry and be paranoid about doing some laundry list of things and get into heaven or not if you don't complete those? John chapter 14, verse 23. Words that right out of Jesus' mouth. Jesus answered him, so one of his disciples is asking him a question. If anyone loves me, he will keep my word, and my Father will love him, and we will come to him and what? What will we do? What will God the Father and God the Son do if you follow Jesus? What will they do? Look at your own Bible. We will make our home with him. This is the most mind-blowing thing that you will ever comprehend, is that God doesn't just go, here's your laundry list of stuff, you better figure this junk out, because when you're dead, I'm going to call you into account, and you better be perfect. We just kind of go, dude, no, who can do this stuff? Nobody can. I sin every day. I love the video, right? Even the guy that's going, do you sin? I guess you could call it sin. What do you mean? I'm not as bad as her or him. That wasn't the question. I'm asking you if you sin. I went to the church barbecue and I stole some water. But I'm not a murderer, if that's what you're saying. No, I wasn't saying you're a murderer. I'm just asking you, do you sin? It's funny, watch this. Humans are the only creatures that have to create this facade around to justify their sin. If this is sin, we're the only creatures. Roaches don't do it. Your dog doesn't do it. Cats don't worry about it. The little gerbils that run around on that little wheel all day long, they don't worry. Humans are the only creatures that go, I'm jacked up. I better figure this out. Right? You want to know why that is? Because God put a conscience in your head. And it tells you when something's wrong. My dog at home, my boxer, doesn't give a rip what he does. Pees on the carpet, happiest day of his life. Does something else, happiest day of his life. I'm like, you peed on the carpet. Don't you know that's wrong? His ears might go back because he hears me yelling. But 1 second after that, I'm like, okay, I forgive you. He doesn't know. He's just reacting because I got mad. But he has no conscience that tells him I shouldn't have done that. I won't do it in the future because it'll make you sad. Because you own this carpet and not me as a dog. But humans are different. We have to rationalize our sin. We have to say, well, I might be a sinner, but I'm not like that guy. I'm definitely not like her. I might have a little sin in my life, but not like you. So even in our own minds, we got to go, I might have some sin, but I'm not a killer. And even murderers go, well, I didn't kill 6 people, but he did. I'm not as bad as that guy. You know, everybody in prison, it's like, I was framed. Really? I'm not saying a small percentage might not have been, but not 98% of people in prison. That wasn't me. I wasn't there. Are you sure? Well, I might have been there, but I didn't do it. Are you sure? Oh, I might have helped, but I didn't really pull the trigger. Are you sure? I may have had my hand on the trigger, but gravity pulled my hand. You know, blame it on gravity. Gravity should be in prison. It's like we have to create this huge superstructure around our sin to try to justify it. And John cuts right through this garbage of our excuses and goes, here's the deal. If you want to follow God, he will give you a new heart, and he will make your actions match the new heart you have. You will get a new daddy in a new family, and you will act a new way. If you wanted to join my family, there's basically 2 ways you get into my family. My wife births you, and you join our family. Pretty automatic, right? The second way is I adopt you into my family. Ready? Watch. My son, I give him a list of things to do as my son. Pick up after the dog. Saturday, I want you to mow the lawn. Take out the trash. Pick up your room. Part of being in my house is you're responsible for things that are part of what I give you. Watch this. If somebody walked up to my house and went, yeah, Mr. Jackson, I mowed your lawn, and I picked up after the dog, and I was actually the one that took your trash out, and I picked up Caleb's room. So that makes me part of your family now, right? No, it doesn't. Who are you? Well, didn't you hear what I said? I did all this stuff. I'm part of your family now, right? No, just because you pick up the trash and go do this little laundry list of things doesn't mean you're part of my family. I have to adopt you into my family. What are you even talking about? It doesn't even make sense. Same thing with the church. Just because you come and sit your butt on something and you hear something from a book does not mean you are a Christian, right? We looked at it last week. Just because you go through a laundry list of what you think it means to be a follower of God does not mean you actually belong to the family. You got to get new inside. You got to get a new daddy. You got to get a new daddy. And that's what John says. Quit talking about your sin like it doesn't exist, because when God forgives you, he moves all the sin away from you, and now you got to quit going back to it. Because you got a new daddy, and there's new rules to follow in this new life. The supernatural reality of God the Father and God the Son living inside of a person correlates to being born again or spiritually coming to life, as the spiritual nature people are born with is dead in regards to pleasing God. The new nature given by God corresponds to his divine nature and allows humans to be called children of God. In the same way a parent knows his child because he looks like him genetically, when Christ returns, he will know those who are his by their new nature. You know how God's going to recognize you? Watch this. Reconnect with me, ready? You know how God's going to recognize you? He won't recognize you by the things you did. He's actually, the Bible says he knows those who are his. And you know how you know who's yours? You know how you know who your own kids are? Pretty much they look like you. I've never seen that kid before, but he's got my ears and my eyes. True story. Last week, I took my son Caleb to Jersey Mike's to eat a glorious sandwich down at Jersey Mike's. Okay? So the way Jersey Mike's works is it's a sandwich shop where you choose everything that you want as you move along this little line behind the glass. I'm standing there with my son, who looks quite a bit like his father. Okay? So me and my son are standing together, and we're going down this line, choosing our bread, choosing our meat, blah, 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 blah. And behind the counter is 4 or 5 people that are working on your sandwich. And as we're walking there, as I'm choosing these things, the people are like making something going like this. Till it gets to the end, and the girl that's ringing us up says to me, "Wow, that's your son." I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Wow, you really passed on a lot of genes." I said, "Yep." You know, the funny thing is there was this short Asian lady behind me with her 3 kids. The lady ringing us up didn't go, "Oh, so these are your kids too?" No? No, they could have been. We could have been married and adopted those kids or whatever. But her first reaction was, "Wow, that kid looks like his dad." And the exact same thing is true spiritually. You get a new daddy, you better start looking like him. You got a new daddy, you better start living like him. When people look at you, they better quit seeing the old you and they start seeing the new daddy in you. Woo! Right? The whole teaching of John is, hey, if you're a child of God, and biblically they speak of being born again, spiritually, or being adopted into the family of God. It's both a picture of these things. When you get into a new family and you got a new daddy, you better start walking a new way. That's what it means to be born again. That's what it means to be a Christian. That's what it means to have Jesus transform your heart. In our day and age, we can actually swap physical hearts out. Right? You got a bad heart, or you got a grandpa or whatever who needs a new heart. You're praying that God brings somebody along that their hearts are compatible. In our day and age, for the first time in history, we are able to swap human hearts out and keep people alive. Spiritually, same thing. You're born with a spiritually dead heart. It wants self. It's self-driven. It's inbred. It always wants self. What makes me happy? Because that's what sin is. It's missing God's mark and being self-consumed like a black hole. It just goes, everything is all about you. When you come to know Christ, God gives you a new heart, and now you're outward focused. How can I please you, God? Because you're my new father. If you got a new heart, you got to start acting a new way. You got a new dad, you better start looking like him. Though no one has ever seen God in his purity, when he returns, believers will see him as he is, as they are transformed to be like him. Believers should live so they will feel no shame at Christ's coming. Number 1, Christians are known by their paternity. Number 2, Christians are known by their practice. Christians should be known about who your daddy is and how you act. Christians are known by their practice. John has previously acknowledged that believers will still sin and struggle with various sins in their lives, though they are saved. Yet he goes on to point out that sin should never be a lifestyle for them. So I grew up for a lot of years in a denomination called the Nazarenes, the Nazarene Church, and their theology, part of their theology is that you can be perfect in this life, that you can be purely holy in this life. And I remember as a young man sitting in church going, dude, there is no way I'm ever going to get there. Maybe some old lady can do some good stuff and she can be perfect, but there is not a chance on this side of heaven or hell that I will say one day I'll wake up and go, oh, I'm perfect. I'm like Jesus. I couldn't even fathom how that would be true. And then because a lot of it comes from this passage where it says that he who is born of God will not sin or not continue in sin. But the Bible actually speaks in John, 1 John, before this passage, says that if you claim to not have sin, you're actually a liar. And when you do sin, you have a mediator between you and God, Jesus Christ. Right? So watch how this works. Ready? I'm going to encourage you. Watch how this works. You will never be perfect in this life. But watch, that doesn't excuse you from pursuing perfection. Just because you will never get there until you're dead, you always pursue that because that's God's calling for your life. God calls you to pursue Him and to leave the old ways behind. That we don't make a practice of sinning anymore. It's not that we won't sin, but we don't make a practice of it. John clarifies that no true believer makes a practice, and it's the Greek word that means the idea of doing something continually, being habitually desiring to do something on a continual basis. That no believer makes a practice of sinning, meaning that the desires and intents of his or her heart is to do evil as an unhindered way of life. Those sinners will sin. Christ's followers will die to their self as they abide in Jesus. And I want to make this point. So, when I got saved, I got a new daddy. Regardless of how good or bad my physical dad was, I got a new spiritual dad. And from then on, when I first got saved, I had this new relationship with God, but I still screwed up a lot. And when I was a young man, there were sins that were so part of my life that I felt like they controlled me. And I said, there's no way I'm going to get rid of these things. I'm going to go through life. Wasn't that awesome? I discovered that in the first service. I couldn't believe how awesome that was. I figured there's no way this sin has such a massive grip on my life that I'm just going to struggle through life and I'm never going to feel like I'm following God. It's just going to be this drudgery of sin and just grinding away at living for God. Maybe old ladies can do it and be perfect, but I'm just going to be in the garbage heap of heaven because I can't make it through life. This is actually very similar to what I felt like my spiritual life would be, off kilter from what it was supposed to be. What I realized, though, is this. The things that I thought had such a grip on me was actually me having a grip on it. And the things that I thought I was a slave to, that I would never get rid of in my life, what I realized as I matured in Christ was I was the one who was gripping these things. And that it's not that I wouldn't stumble, but for the first time in my life, I felt freedom. It wasn't that I was being held down by my sin. It was that I held on to my sin instead of following God. So there was a new way for me to walk in my new life. Instead of going back to my old ways, God called me to walk in a new way. And as I matured, I started to let go of things that I knew God didn't want me to do. And it was weird because as I continued to follow Him, it got easier and easier and easier to not do those things and to walk away and to say, I don't have to be strapped to that. I can walk here. I can walk where God wanted me to walk. I'm not stuck with that kind of life. Because I have a new heart. And I have new desires now. And I have a new path. Why would I stay stuck there and walk my old way when I could walk this way? I have a new daddy. I have new desires. And I have a new road. And so it's up to me if I'm going to choose this road or I go this way. Because I can always go back, but God calls me to go forward. As Christians mature, revulsion for sin should grow. You should hate your sin. The more you become mature, the more you should hate it, right? I mean, I hate my sin so much more than when I was a teenager. When I was a teenager, I just go, I screwed up. But now as I'm getting to be an old crusty guy, I go, dude, come on. I get irritated with myself. I just go, come on, man. And you know what? That's a good sign of maturity in your life. When you don't go, oh, it's just the way I am. I've been this way for 40 years. Whatever. That's a sign of immaturity. Where you say, oh, this is just the way I am. I'm going to always travel this path. I'll never be able to let go. Yeah, you can. You totally can. But it takes some self-discipline. And as you mature, you go, I'm irritated at myself for the sin I do. God, help me to be the man of God you want me to be. Help me to be the woman of God you want me to be. That's a sign of maturity. You know you're growing in Christ when you hate your sin more than you love to do it. You may end up doing it a couple times and whatever else, but it's the practice of it, just the continual, like, this is what part of who I am is done. I might stumble back down that path, but God sets me on a new path every time. Watch how beautiful this is. I might stumble down this path, and God goes, why are you going back down that path? You know, we gave that up. I go, and when you repent of your sin, the grace and the love of God comes to get you. And goes, this is the road we're going on, remember? Here we go. This is the road we're going on. Let's walk down this road. And even if we stumble back down this path and their conscience goes, don't do it, don't do it. Guess what? The grace of God comes swooping back in. Let's go. Cleans you off. Jesus, I broke my spiritual arm. Here, let me fix that. God sets your bones, cleans you up. You ready now? I think so. Let's go again. God's grace and love just, here we go. Here we go. It's like being with a kid. Nope. Jesus, help. Okay, here we go. I mean, it's the love. It's just the never-ending love and grace of God. Isn't that beautiful? So what I'm not saying this morning is, get your life straight, be perfect, and then you'll have it figured out. You're never going to get there. But what I am saying is, you stop making a practice of these things as a lifestyle. Going, I'm not changed. I don't have a new dad. I don't have a new heart. I'm just going to do the same junk over and over. Hey, you need to get saved. You need your heart to be new. And if that's happened, quit running down the same roads. That's inexcusable. You got a new daddy. Right? You got a new heart. For some of us, we wish we had a vertical over 3 inches. We've never been able to jump past our shoes our whole life. Right? For some of us, we had a dream of just crossing up somebody and breaking ankles and going to the hole and dunking a basketball in the NBA. That was a dream for us. Unfortunately, we're 4'2" and we can't jump over a little stump. Watch this. What if I told you that physically, if you just walked around this speaker, you'd have a 43-inch vertical and you'd be 6'8"? I'll give it a try. Didn't work for me. But what if it did? And all of a sudden it was like, and I had calves the size of a tree trunk, and I could jump up and touch that ceiling. You'd go, that's amazing. How were you able to change your physical DNA to become different? You know what I would say? God made me different. I was born with this, but God made me different. Same thing spiritually. You were born one way, a sinner in rebellion to God, but when you get a new nature, you're able to do new things. You don't have to be the old way. You can be something new. Because spiritually, God has made you new. God has made you to be different. Close with this. Because of the love of God, Christians are propelled to be change agents in their sphere of influence in the same way Christ has changed them. There is no such thing as a Christian who does not strive to look like Christ. Truth of profession is always proved by truth of practice. And I love Luke 6:46. I'm not going to turn there, but I love Jesus' words. You know what Jesus' words say? And I'm close with this. Ready? Come back to me. I'm done. Ready? Luke 6:46. Jesus' words say, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I say? What? I love that. Why do you call yourself a Christian? Why do you call yourself a follower of me, but you don't do what I say? It doesn't even compute. Why do you call God your daddy, but you don't look like him? It doesn't even make sense. Why do you say you got a new heart, but you're still walking the same road? Why do you say you got new spiritual DNA, but your physical DNA does the same old junk? Right? God's great love for you and me is that his grace just goes, let's go again, let's go again, let's go again. I'm going to help you walk down this path. I'm not leaving it up to you. I'm here for you. I love you. Let's walk together. Let's make something new. Let's make something great for the glory of God and the pleasure of your own soul.